many people for so long would say to me, gosh, you seem like you have it all together. You have it. You have the perfect life, right? On paper, you've got it all. And I would tell people, well, I just perfected the mask that I wore.
You are now listening to the highlight reel builder for authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. Today's episode is sponsored by the Going North Podcast.com shop. And we're back at you again with some more new designs for some of the goodies. There's the podcast logo itself. We now have the compass shockwave going on, along with the outread your competition to outlead your competition version 2, and the classic, not so classic, advance others to advance yourself. So check it all out on goingnorthpodcast.com. Click on shop and check out all the gear. It comes in pins, t-shirts, mugs, hoodies, and you can even get different variations of the t-shirt. You get pre-washed and all the other good stuff indeed. So check it all out on goingnorthpodcast.com/shop. And today on the highlight reel builder for authors, known as GMP, the great, glorious, and glamorous. Heck, might as well add gorgeous because that's today's guest as well. In addition to all three of those other G's, we got another super special, awesome human on the podcast today, folks. Courtesy of Sacred Stories Publishing, baby. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right, all the hidden halos and tiaras and crowns hidden somewhere with all the spirituality, fabulosity, folks. That's right indeed. Because today's guest, folks, is a wonderful author, a spiritual visionary, medicine woman, and a sacred storyteller. You heard that right, folks. A sacred storyteller who weaves ancient wisdom with modern science to empower families to thrive, folks. Let's give it up for the KV herself, the kind and victorious. Let's give it up for Dr. Kristy Vanacore. How you doing today, Dr. Kristy?
Hey, Dom, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. Excited to talk with you tonight.
Oh yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right. All the honor with all the thrones and the knees to the random rugs and the floors. That's right. Don't worry, the throne could be made of rocks or tree branches if you want. No, it's all about rewilding, right?
That's it. Hey, we can rewild the throne too, right?
That's right. Don't just watch it, rewild it.
That's it. Exactly.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, as you know, with all introductions, they're not allowed to be 57 and 8 hours long. And I'm pretty sure I forgot at least 47 days of content. So my goodness, am I filling in any cavities I may have missed about you?
No, I mean, it was a good summary. I think, first and foremost, I just, when people say, okay, tell me about yourself, I'm like, look, I'm just a stumbling human like you, right? Like all of us. So, I have all these cool titles and I do, a lot of interesting and beautiful work in the world. And but at the end of the day, I'm on a journey too, right? Just like everybody. And, I'm on the same path. So I'm a mom. I have two kids, and I was gifted with this awesome task of being a world server, right? And just being in the world, trying to help people, and just trying to help families thrive, right? Help people go from, sick and starving and feeling stifled and feeling lost to, feeling found and connected and whole again. And it's the only thing I know how to do. It's what I love to do. It's who I am. And so that's what this whole rewilding mission is about. It's how I took myself from sick, and starving and stifled to healing and whole. And it's just what I strive to do for others. But at the end of the day, I'm still on the path. So
Still on the path, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, did you ever think one day at the age of 12, like you'd be one day a doctor and a mom of two?
You know, at the age of 12, I somehow knew that I was called to help people, even from earlier than 12 in my life. From a very little girl, I knew that I was going to make an impact on the world. I did. And I would say that sometimes to people, to friends or to my mom. And, it was sort of like, okay, sweetie, go run off and play, right? You know, but I did. I knew from very young that I was going to help people. I didn't know how. I don't think at that point I would have said, I'm going to be a doctor, and I didn't know how this mission was going to look and how it was going to unfold. But I did know that I was gifted with this mission to really make an impact on the world, because I knew from very young that I saw things differently and that I felt things differently. And there were certain points in my childhood when that difference, right, being different from everyone else, didn't feel so good. But then something, right, it was some like higher force, right, that helped me to understand that it was that difference that was going to help me to do this work in the world, right, that I was gifted with this mission, and I was different from others because I was supposed to change things and help awaken people. So again, I didn't know how that was going to play out, but I did know that I was called to help and to heal. And as far as being a mom, I always wanted to be a mom. And I always wanted to have boys, and here I've got two of them. So fun times.
There you go. That's right. That law of attraction swag D. It's like, hey, want to be a mom of two boys, baby? Well, at least a
Yep.
boy mom. That's right, indeed. That's right,
Yeah,
indeed.
being a boy mom is a lot of fun. And, all my friends used to tease me and say, you're such a girly girl. Don't you want to like have a bunch of girls and, take them out to get manis and petties and all this stuff? And I went, oh God, no, that sounds awful. It's like, I want to go for a mani pedi by myself, and I want to, do other like fun, cool things. I want to get into stuff, and it was sort of like I think part of it was my way of saying, I wanted some adventure, because, as a little girl, as a really little girl, I was this mystical, magical, wondrous little girl, used to romp the streets and, get into all kinds of adventure. But, then life happens, right? And I call it the domestication, different traumatic experiences, and life just has its way, and has, had its way with me. And so I lost a lot of that, and really became riddled with anxiety, really debilitating anxiety, and all of that sense of adventure went away. I was afraid of my own shadow for many years. And so, I often wondered if my dream of having boys was because, for some reason I thought, okay, boys get into stuff, you know boys get into trouble a little more than girls, right, stereotypically. And I want to get into a little trouble. I want to rough and tough it out with the boys. I want to go on all these adventures, and that is certainly what being a boy mom has been all about. So lots of adventures. I'm a Boy Scout mom. Both of my boys are in Boy Scouts. And so there's a lot of hiking and camping and smelly stuff, but it's a lot of fun.
So adventure and no competition. I got you. Let me stop.
ah, well, I will say they play ice hockey. So there is a lot of competition that is happening around these ways. So my younger son is a goalie, and that is just whew, boy. I never played sports growing up. I take that back. I played basketball for a couple years, until everyone realized that short people really don't do well playing basketball. Short people, don't have an advantage on the basketball court. But I did play for a little while. But otherwise, I never played sports. But my kids are so into ice hockey. It's the only sport they play, but they love it tremendously. and lot of competition. So it's fun. It's interesting.
Ah, there you go. Fun on the bun indeed. Fun on the bun indeed. And my goodness, you mentioned trauma, and hearing you speak, folks will be like, man, as pleasant as she sounds, and she's off the market too, like, man, she probably has it. All of her days probably been perfect. Like, she probably went through no setbacks
Oh,
whatsoever.
no, no, that couldn't be further from the truth. Oh boy, no, 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 no. But no. I mean, look, I believe, trauma is an interesting word. I actually just posted a blog about this the other day because I use that word trauma a lot, and it's a word that means a lot of different things to a lot of people, right? To a lot of different people. So some people hear that word trauma and they think, oh gosh, uh, that means some horrific, horrible thing, right? That had to have happened to me. Um, and that's not necessarily the case, right? Of course, we know that there are really, um, you know, uh, outlandish things that happen to people that people go to war and people get abused and all sorts of things. But the way that I teach about trauma, the way that I learned about trauma as a psychologist and as a psychologist who was trained and specifically to work with trauma using techniques with somatic experiencing, right? Meaning through the body, because trauma lives in the body, is that trauma is anything that causes kind of a hiccup in our nervous system and leaves us with a feeling of being helpless, that in that moment we can't help ourselves, that we don't have the capacity in that moment to do anything about our situation, right? Now that could mean, yes, something really horrific, right? Some really tragic thing. Or it could mean we're five and someone steals our lollipop and we're so devastated, right? Because we waited all week to get that sweet treat on a Friday and that was our lollipop and now somebody took it from us and we don't have it, and that is traumatizing. So, trauma is anything that caused our nervous system to become dysregulated and we didn't have in that moment for whatever reason the capacity to bring our nervous system back into regulation. That's what trauma is all about. And so I say that because every single being who is alive right now has experienced trauma, right? Trauma is not reserved for, books and movies. And again, these, stories that we read in the news. Trauma is universal. And in fact, Bessel van der Kolk, who is really a pioneer researcher in the field of trauma, he says that trauma is the Western world's most urgent public health crisis because that is how prevalent it is. And the effects, the impact of trauma, again, regardless of whether it's a stolen lollipop or, some horrific tragedy, right? Regardless of the circumstance, is that the impact of trauma lasts and it leaves an imprinting in our cells and our muscles and our joints and tissues. Trauma is not what happened to us, it's not the story, it's what happened inside of us because of what happened to us, right? So it's a universal phenomenon. It is an urgent public health crisis. We all have a story. We all have a story of trauma. We've all experienced something, right? And as long as we're alive, there'll always be a story to tell. And that's an interesting thing, right? Is that, many people for so long would say to me, gosh, you seem like you have it all together. You have it, you have the perfect life, right? On paper, you've got it all. And I would tell people, well, I just perfected the mask that I wore because for years I was living behind a mask. I hid it really well. I hid the trauma. I hid the impact of my traumas really well, which, I alluded to before was really debilitating anxiety and then a host of chronic physiological health issues, autoimmune disease, lupus, and all of that, digestive issues. And it was pretty horrible for a long time, but I hid it well. I hid it really well until I couldn't hide it anymore. Right. And then what some might call a breakdown, I called my breakthrough. right? And it was catalyzed by a really traumatic birthing experience with my older son. And I became incredibly sick, right? Everything got worse. The psychological issues, the anxiety got worse, the physiological issues got worse. And I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to live. I had made a decision that I wasn't going to live. And then I saw a little drawing that my son had made for me at the time. And I realized, okay, I get it. I get why this kid's in my life. He's my greatest teacher. And I've got to learn from him and I've got to save myself for him. And so I picked myself up off the floor, literally, and decided to help myself. And my book, um, Rewilding, A Woman's Quest to Remember Her Roots, Rekindle Her Instincts, and Reclaim Her Sovereignty, is my memoir. In effect, it's my story of how I took myself, from that place of being broken and so shackled by trauma and all of the conditioning of my past and all of the coping skills, the masks that I wore that made everyone think on the surface I looked like I had it all, right? But I was hiding so much. And so that book is my story of how I removed the mask and got real and got healthy in the process. And I decided to share my story because I knew I wasn't alone. And given the work that I do, I knew that I couldn't ask people to go deeper than I was willing to go myself. So I had to share my story.
Well, glad you're still here. Definitely glad you're still here. And my goodness, it's actually amazing how drawing from your son actually helped you to really save your life and really help remind
Yeah.
you, like, hey, there's a reason why you're here. It's like the kids are amazing. Kids are definitely amazing. Like they call us out in their BS and they help remind us to live. Heck, even actually, if I'm not mistaken, I believe actually the wonderful founder, Sacred Stories, Ariel Patricia, actually her daughter actually helped her with reminding her of, hey, like, hey, you're still valued in this world. Don't take your life now because she
Yeah.
was suicidal herself. So
Yeah.
glad you're still here.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It is amazing you know, how our children, and I believe our children choose to come in through us and they've got so much to teach us. And so I have learned so much from my kids. At one point, I used to call my boys my little Buddhas. I was like, you guys are teaching me, right, what it means to grow in every way, spiritually and otherwise. You guys are really showing me what it means to really need to understand myself, and to act in these higher ways, right? It's like, okay, they're showing me.
There we go. I guess that one. Now I know the true meaning of the tiny Buddha site. That's right.
That's it.
That's
Yep.
that's right. The tiny Buddhas. That's right, indeed. I'm surprised you didn't call them the little Care Bears.
Yeah. 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 Little Care Bears.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, out of curiosity, did the lollipop actually get taken from you as a child? Is that one of your favorite examples for that reason, or is it just something that you were taught and it's like, oh, it's something that could be small to us but actually big to them? Like, is that what really happened, or is it just a example you like to go to?
So the lollipop didn't happen to me per se, although I had many stories like that, right? So for example, I'll say the lollipop happened to one of the first clients I ever worked with, who insisted adamantly that she had never experienced trauma in her life. And then one day tells me this story about this lollipop that she waited all week to have, and it was taken from her. So yeah, that story is a favorite of mine to share because of how it was told to me, and it was sort of this breakthrough moment for this woman, sitting across from me in my office. But for me personally, I had similar stories where, so I had um, uh, you know, I was bullied, I was picked on, I was teased. I was in summer camp one year and I used to love the color green. I loved being out in nature. And so some of the quote unquote mean girls started calling me pond scum and threw me into the water one day. And, so things like that. I had, my favorite keychain stolen off my backpack. And, so again, all these seemingly insignificant things that have such a profound cumulative effect, on the psyche. So yeah, those are my lollipop stories. there are there are other stories too, but those are definitely the lollipop moments.
Well, darn. It's like, man, I guess lollipops aren't positive anymore, feels like. Like, darn.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Like, no.
Yeah, got to rethink those lollipops. Yeah.
Sounds like a blog title in the making. Rethink those lollipops, huh?
Yes. Right, right.
If you go to lick it, it's game over. Don't do
Right. Yep. Yep. Forget them suckers, pun intended.
it. There we go.
There's the blog title. Forget them suckers.
Oh, yeah. Like where this is going, like where this is going. So my goodness, this wonderful memoir that you decided to put pen to paper and put the magical tome out for the world to read, devour, and really experience. So, my goodness, what was it like reliving all of those moments you decided to really put in the final copy of the book?
Oh, I love that you asked this question. I really do. And I've had a number of interviews, and I've always hoped that I'd be asked this question because I certainly did not realize what writing a memoir would entail. And I don't think that most people really understand it. You know, I could write a psychology textbook in my sleep, right? I could write a how-to manual on anything in my sleep, right? It's factual, it's, pretty unemotional. But to really share your story is one of the most vulnerable experiences that I've ever had in my life, for sure. And I never had the intention of writing a book, right? So I wasn't one of these people, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I'm just using this as an example. I wasn't one of these people who said, oh, I'm a doctor now, I have to write a book and be a published author. I didn't care about any of that. I still don't. I still don't. This book isn't about, becoming an author and writing a book and selling a book, right? I never had intention of writing a book. But I always was an open book, and I always loved and believed in the power of story. I always, from being a little girl, I loved hearing people's stories. And people were always very drawn to me and would always tell me their stories, especially older people. Older people were very drawn to me. I was very mature, very responsible, and very articulate from a young age. And so, older people loved to talk to me because they could actually have a conversation. And I would be a listener. I was a listener for my father also. I was a confidant for him, for a long time. Anyway, I became a good listener of story, and I loved story. And I loved hearing stories of like just real humanness, just people's vulnerability, right? And always felt like, wow, it's so heroic to be human, and I would feel that from hearing people's stories. So story was always valuable. Story was always important to me. And and for me, I was also an open book. And when I started working with clients professionally, um, without even knowing what I was doing, right? Meaning it wasn't intentional that this happened. I would share my story and not realizing that it was through sharing my story that I was teaching and guiding, right? And I've always been very drawn to Native American culture. I know I have a lot of roots from past lives, and I bring that up because the in the shamanic and the indigenous cultures, right? How did the elders teach? How did the elders mentor? How did the elders heal? They did so through storytelling, right? So, I'd be sitting with clients and I would be sharing my stories, and clients would sit there just mesmerized and hanging on my every word, and would then say, my gosh, like something just shifted in me, something just changed. And so, I started to over time understand what was happening, right? That it was through that beautiful healing salve. That's one of the universal healing salves, is storytelling. And I started to realize what was happening. So I was always an open book. And one day, I was sitting with a teenage client of mine. She was probably 15 or 16 at the time. And I had been sharing a story with her, and she was in tears. And then she shared some of her stories that evening. It was a night. It was like 9 o'clock at night. She had just come from her lacrosse practice, and we were sitting in my office having tea together and talking. And as the session wrapped up and she got up to leave, she came over to me. And I always embrace my clients. I'm also a hugger. I'm a storyteller and a hugger. I'm a perpetual lover. So we went to embrace, and she took my hands and looked in my eyes. And I swear it was like she was channeling a message for me. And she said, Kristy, the whole world needs to hear your story. And I was so um, I was just stopped dead in my tracks. And and I heard loud and clear again what in that moment felt like, okay, her lips are moving. It's her voice I hear, but this is coming from a much higher place. This is coming from a higher power, and it's being delivered through her. And I looked at her and I said, yes, I will do it. And the next day, I had a doctor's appointment. I was still pretty physically sick at the time, and I was going for vitamin infusions, intravenous infusions several times a week. And the next day, I had an appointment, and I was sitting in the reclining chair, laying back with the needles in my arm. And I took my other hand and I grabbed my phone and I pressed record, and there started the book. And initially I thought, okay, I have a few stories to share. And I didn't realize how much more there was inside of me, right? Like, I knew what I was conscious of, right? But didn't even know what I was unconscious of still. And once I got things moving, it was like the floodgates opened, and all of the stories that I had just, shut down inside of me, right? All the traumatic experiences, right? All of the things that, our system works so hard to protect us from, right? We shut it all out, we shut it away. It was ready, and it was time. But, you know, like you asked in your question, what's it like to unpack all that and relive all of that? That is what happens. So every time a new experience emerged and became, I call it like the dislodging, right? Because we know that trauma really imprints on us and it gets stuck and it creates all kinds of energetic blockages in us. And so every time that there would be a dislodging and it would rise to the surface, whew, it was, I had to stay there with it. I had to feel it, right? I teach people we need to feel it to heal it. We need to move it to mend it, right? So I had to feel it. I had to dance with it, right? I couldn't just gloss over it. Oh, yeah, this and this and this happened and write it like I was writing some textbook. Oh, no. Oh, no. So I had to sit with it. So this book, I have it at the end of my book, I write sort of a little, what's the word? I guess it's like a postscript, if you will. And, right as my book was about to be complete, my kids said to me, Mommy, why did it take you so long to write this? you know, And I looked at them like, shit, dude, like you have no idea what I've been through, you know? And you know, I had Ernest Hemingway's quote just roll off my tongue. You know, there's nothing to writing, boys. All you do is sit at a typewriter and bleed. You know, and they sort of looked at me like, huh? You know? And so, yeah, so you want to know what that process was like? Wow. It honestly, seriously was the most therapeutic, cathartic experience ever. And I've done a lot of work on myself on my journey, right? Every kind of therapy you can think of, right? Every kind of modality, every kind of treatment to help myself along the way. And nothing was more profound than actually excavating my story and putting it out there into the world and standing tall in that vulnerability, right? Really seeing vulnerability as strength and having the courage to say, okay, you know, I am Kristy, this is my story. And I'm grateful for every single verse of this story, all of it, right? There, because, you know, that's what happens, right? When we're healing from trauma. And, you know, this isn't like, okay, excavate this story, remember what happened, and now, and you know, you have to feel it. You feel all the emotion. There's sadness, there's anger, there's grief, all of it. And then you reach a place of compassion, right? Compassion, that magic, I call it the magic lever that brings us from a place of fear to trust and love. Compassion, compassion for the people in our lives who might have been less than kind, compassion for ourselves, right? For having done the best we could at the time, right? And the best we could by burying it because we had to survive. And then compassion through the process of excavating and feeling it again, right? So much compassion. So, yeah, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this book for sure. And now I just feel so much love and admiration for this book. I call this book my baby because it was the longest gestation period ever. It was like a pregnancy. Oh man, and my hardest one, let me tell you. My hardest pregnancy, my longest labor, but in the end, you know, when I hold this book, um you know, it's holding my own life in my hands now, in a way that I never could before. And, you know, holding her lovingly and compassionately and with kindness. And that then allows me to offer other people the chance to do the same thing for themselves.
Woohoo! That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Yeah, definitely can agree with you on that about the memoir piece because it's like, hey, man, and you're so right about the trauma. It's like, man, everybody's dealt with trauma at various levels, and they've affected us subconsciously and consciously. And then it's like, all right, time to put on this miner's hat with the flashlight, put on a hard hat, some boots. Let's go excavating,
Let's
y'all. Let's
go excavating.
We're mining for gold, y'all. Gonna put it on paper.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, it was. Oh, such a deep dive. Yeah. Yeah. And willing to go, you know, just willing to go deeper. And like every time that I got to like another layer down, I'd be like, whoa, okay, this is it. I'm here. And then all of a sudden it'd be like, oh shit, there's more. You know? And it's like, okay, we got to go down a little more and down a little more. And so it was just so fascinating. But you know, that mining metaphor is so profound because you know I really believe that my book, you know, it's so much more than an interesting story. And of course, you know, some people may read it and say, okay, you know, fascinating, cool story, interesting. For me, this book is really, you know, it's sharing my story is a way of me being in service to others, right? Because story is medicine, right? So my story can become like a healing elixir for others. right? And I really believe that it's a call to action for readers to maybe consider their own journey, right? Whatever that means for them, right? Their journey is not going to look like mine, and it shouldn't. However, the the wisdom that I've attained on my journey that I share in the pages of that book, my hope is that that becomes a lantern that will light the way for my readers for their own journey, right? So it's like carrying that lantern down into the caves, right? Down into the darkness, because you know that there is gold just waiting there. That's all the gems that are just waiting to be discovered.
So is the poetry book gonna be next? Cause you just dropped one heck of a one-liner. That's right, sharing your story is a service to others indeed. Cause my goodness, that's freaking huge. Cause hey, like hearing your
Yeah.
story, reading your story, like folks may get the confidence to maybe share their story, heck even get the confidence to keep living and growing and getting better and eventually thriving.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all I want. That's all I want. When I did make the decision, when that client looked at me and said, the world needs to hear a story, and I said, okay, I will do it. That was my promise, right? I made a promise right there to to the world. And my only um wish, my only hope in it was that there might be one person, right? Just like when I wake up every day and head into the office, right? It's like, okay, if I could just, reach one person, then I've done my job, right? So if my story can make an impact on one person, right? If one person reads it and says, "Yes, yes," right? I was there too, or I'm there now. And maybe, as you said, right? Maybe it gives them hope, and beyond hope, right? Maybe it makes them see that it's attainable, more so than just hopefulness, right? This sort of, loosey goosey idea of let's hang on to hope. No, it's like here's a here's an action plan here, right? Here's a roadmap. Like, take my hand, right? I'm extending my hand with this book. I'm here for you, right? Take my hand, because we are not meant to walk this journey alone. No matter what our journey looks like, right? Look, we're all going to the same place. but but I want one person to take my hand, and then I know I've done my job. So it's like that's, with this book, I extend my hand out to the world for who's ever ready to take it.
Woohoo! That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Chris has got you by the hand, yo. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. And I know hands also go in terms with holistic psychology, because I hear you were, or still are, a prominent trailblazer for 2 decades, and you sound like you've been on here for 3.5 decades. So, my goodness. So, what does holistic psychology entail, and how does it really help you be the best Dr. Kristy that you can be?
Yeah. So, that word holistic, right? It's a tricky word because it means kind of like trauma, right? It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And when I used to use that word holistic, some of my some of my best friends who can tease me a little bit, they used to say, "Oh, there you go with your crunchy granola ways," right? Your earthy, crunchy, tree hugging ways. And look, I am a tree hugger, so there's no shame in me admitting that. But what led me down this road? So I was trained, excuse me, as a very traditional Western medical model. Okay, right? I wore a white lab coat. We were trained to give diagnoses and medicate and therapize people. And that's the training that I received. And right from the start, it never made sense to me. And part of why it didn't make sense to me is because, again, I was suffering myself, right? So there I was, even before I got to grad school, even in college, again, debilitating anxiety, and recognizing, like, okay, talk therapy wasn't really working, right? Okay, it was a little helpful, got to share a little bit of my story, but it wasn't really working. And everyone who I encountered just wanted to keep medicating me. And I thought, well, no, that doesn't feel right. Medicine has its place, but there's something deeper here, you know. And again, I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something, right? And my instincts were always very spot on, and I knew to trust them. So, I just kept chugging along. And as I progressed through my own journey of my own healing, as well as my education, I was becoming more and more frustrated by the Western medicine's very fragmented and frankly, I came to realize very erroneous and ineffective way of helping people, because it wasn't helping people. It was just treating symptoms, right? There was no empowering people. And again, I was witnessing this both as a psychologist as well as a client within the system. So I saw, again, at every spin around the wheel, right? I was seeing that there was a massive disconnect between mind, body, and spirit. And forget spirit. Nobody was talking about spirit, right? And mind and body, like this was, still at the time, like now, you're hearing more and more people talk about, okay, mind, body. We're still not getting it completely right, but we're getting there. But at the time, nobody was talking about this connection between mind and body, right? It was just targeting symptoms, prescribing pills and talk therapy, band-aiding symptoms. And you sat on a therapist couch for 20 years talking about all the ways that your mama wronged you, and you never really got anywhere, right? And so I, through my own healing journey, when I became really pretty debilitated physically, I began to see that symptoms were nothing more than invitations that were asking me to dive deeper to find the real root cause, right? And so I became I went on this mission to say, okay, I want to know root cause psychology, right? It's not enough for me to say I'm anxious or my client is depressed, right? Or my young client has trouble focusing and sustaining attention. That's not enough for me. That's not the story, right? I want to know deeper. I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper. I want to know the root cause. And so I began to study more, again with the motivation with that was twofold, right? To heal and help myself. And I started to learn very quickly that it was through helping and healing myself that I was going to offer the same for people, right? For other people. And that I needed to go through what I was going through to offer it to other people, right? To offer that wisdom to other people. So I was on this search for the root cause. And the more that I was learning about trauma, right, again, through my studies, through my personal work, I realized that trauma was at the root cause of everything, right? So we know this is science that trauma impacts the physical body at the nervous system level, the energetic body, and then the level of the soul. So right now, okay, Bessel van der Kolk's quote that I mentioned earlier, right? That trauma is a public health crisis. It's urgent. 88% of people, and I believe that's a gross underestimate at 88%, are living in bodies stuck in states of chronic dis-ease, right? Disease, dis-ease, and they don't even know it, right? So many people are walking around lost, lifeless. They don't know what's going on. Their bodies are breaking down, right? Forget spirit. There's no connection to anything bigger than themselves, right? They can't even feel themselves. Um, and sadly, the traditional system is still just trying to band-aid and medicate and therapize symptoms. So as I continued on my journey, again, I was staying sick. I was seeing my clients stay sick. And I said, okay, I've got to do something, right? Because I'm spending decades being sick, but yet doing something about it. And I'm not experiencing any meaningful or lasting relief, right? And that was what so many of my clients were saying, like, Kristy, I'm doing the work, right? I'm coming to therapy. I'm taking the pills. I'm doing it all, right? But why do I still have severe IBS? Why do I still suffer chronic migraines, right? Why am I so anxious that I can't even go to my board meeting at work? Why am I so depressed that I can't even get out of bed? Why am I thinking continuously of ending my life? Right? Why am I addicted to substances? Right? Why can't I focus and pay attention and my brain is foggy and I can't remember what I ate for breakfast this morning? Right? Why can't I make decisions? Why am I struggling to make money? And by that, I mean to just survive, right? Why am I constantly sabotaging myself? Why do I feel devoid of purpose? Right? So these are questions that, ironically, it was a parallel process. I was asking myself, and I was witnessing clients ask these same questions, right? And I thought, okay, there's more here. There's more, right? There's more to getting to the root. And that's when I dove deeper again into trauma, right? I started understanding, ancestral burdens, right? Bodies imprinted with wounds of trauma. There was stress and burnout, right? Because we're all wearing so many hats and doing multiple roles, right? People are so isolated and detached from one another. When I grew up, my family, they all lived in one building in the Bronx in New York. My aunts were on the third floor and the cousins were on the second floor, and it took a village, right? It took a village. And now people are so isolated and disconnected, and families are in disharmony, and there's no communication. And we're seeing children diagnosed with chronic illness at such alarming rates. And so that's when I really started making the decision to, like, okay, I've got to rewild not just myself, but the field of psychology and mental wellness. And that word rewilding, what it really is all about, right? It's returning to our natural processes and rhythms, right? Restoring and reclaiming the essence of what it means to be human. So by rewilding psychology, and bringing it into this more quote unquote holistic place, meaning looking at the whole person, getting to the root. This is about illuminating these overlooked yet supremely critical aspects of health and wellness so that people can finally heal and thrive. And what I've realized is through my studies, again, of healing my own self and trying to help others, was that the medicine people for millennia knew this stuff, right? That we are self healers. Our magnificent energy bodies have built in functions to restore balance and health all the time. It's within us. We just have to learn how it works. We have to learn how these energy bodies work, right? We have to get back to the essence of what it means to be human. And we've gotten so far removed from that, right? In the villages, however many years ago, right? If we if we went to a medicine person in the village complaining of any ailment, right? From digestive issues, skin issues, to anxiety, to depression, to attentional problems, and we went to a medicine person or a shaman, they would ask us 4 questions. And those questions are: when did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop believing in the magic of storytelling? And when did you stop finding comfort in silence? Those are uh, four things, the 4 practices that if we're not doing those things, dancing and singing and telling stories, right? And the silence, right? Coming back into ourselves, right? And developing that ability to understand ourselves, then we're disconnected from our soul. We're disconnected from our essence, right? And in ancient medicine, what is a state of disease? It's dis-ease. What is dis-ease? What is lack of ease? It's a disconnection from your essence, from the essence of who you are. And it's there, it's in us. It doesn't go away. We just lose the ability to see it. it gets buried by all the stories, right? Like I mentioned before, all the trauma that we bury, all the conditioning, right? That people tell us, oh, don't do this and don't do that, right? We become who the world needs us to be, right? And we do that for survival when we're young, but we've got to unbury ourselves. So in rewilding this field of psychology, this more holistic approach, this was going back to basics, to understanding where we became buried, where we became cut off from our essence, and then taking people on a mission of removing all of that so that they can become whole again, right? That's what I mean by holistic psychology. That's what I mean by, I've rewilded this field. It's really all about empowering people to go from being seekers to being the source for themselves.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's right, indeed. Source swag, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's right. Might as well put Reverend in front of the doctor, baby, because she's preaching, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. The lab coat's really a robe, indeed, because she's dropping that heat, indeed. It's quite interesting, too, because if I'm not mistaken, you said 88% of folks in the world have,
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
it, disease or trauma, or is it both?
88%. So the current data, the current reported stats, and I say reported because this is that, these are people who are reporting this, have 88% of Americans have multiple chronic illnesses, right? So that could be, again, anything from physical stuff, right? Digestive issues, migraine headaches. These are, I'm saying some of the ones that I see, I mean, daily, right? And then add to that anxiety, depression. I mean, my gosh, if we look at what people are medicated for, right? If we all we have to do is turn on a TV and we see every other commercial is for a medication, right? For this, that, and the other thing. Yeah, 88%. So 88% of people are living with a body in a state of dis-ease, and they don't know why. And they're still believing in a system that is keeping them stuck and keeping them sick. They don't know what they don't know, right? Look, I didn't know what I didn't know for a long time until I knew. And I always say, once you see, you can't unsee, right? You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know, right? You can't unhear what you've heard. So, once my eyes were opened, I'm like, whoa, I want to help other people open their eyes and see. And it's not easy because this whole journey for me, and the journey that I guide my clients on, it's an unlearning. When I say take my hand, I'm going on this journey with you. We're going to go through that mining, right? Down in the mine. We're going to unlearn everything that you were told is true. We're going to unlearn it. And you're going to see what's really true, right? We have everything we need right within us. And the world that we live in has taught us otherwise. And it's time that we unlearn that so that we can reclaim our sovereignty.
Woohoo! That's right, indeed. Reclaim and rewild, y'all. That's right. Get some of that nature inside you, y'all. Get around it, indeed, too. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, my goodness. So, since you've been on this mini interview tour, promoting the good work that you're doing and all the future work you're planning on doing, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on these podcasts?
Well, as I said to you before, I loved the question you asked me about the process of writing the book. That is one that that so far no one has asked. And I'm like, please, someone ask me this because it is it's so powerful. So I would say, that is definitely a question that I really wish that I would be asked more about because and I say that not because I want like praise for doing this thing of writing this book. No, it's because um I want people to understand how even for someone like me, and I say that because, people come to me and they're like, well, you're the expert, right? And also, as you alluded to before, well, on the surface, right, it looks like you've got it all together. So you couldn't have gone through anything. Well, no, I want people to understand that even the process of excavating all the shit that I did go through, that was a journey, right? And that was hard. And that took blood, sweat, and tears and courage. And there were many times I crumpled up the papers and threw them in the garbage. There were many times that I gave up, right? There were many times that I said, you know what? Forget this. I don't think I'm strong enough to do this. There were many times that I worried, what are people going to think? Right? That was a big one. What are people going to think? Because there are stories in this book that the people closest to me didn't even know about. And this was going to be like dropping the bomb. Okay. And I was like, whoa, can I handle that explosion? I don't know. I don't know. Right. And I'm a pretty strong girl, Well, I'm from the Bronx and we're tough girls. But I was like, I don't know if I can handle this explosion. So I say all this because the process of writing this in and of itself is something that I want to share with people because it was hard for me too. And still, having my story out in the world. And I have some people say to me, girl, you're crazy. Why would you admit this or that? Why would you say this or that? And I say, well, because to me, authenticity is the most beautiful trait and the most beautiful gift. And if I can't live authentically, then I don't want to live. So now I'm choosing to live, but I want to live authentically. I want to live in my truth. And I want to inspire other people to do the same. And I want to say, yeah, it's scary. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not one of these positive psychology people. That's a pet peeve of mine. These positive psychology, think positive, love and light. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. It is not all love and light. Spirituality is not about love and life. Spirituality is about living the day to day. It is being in the trenches and still standing up. It's going deeper into yourself time and time again, even when it's hard, even when it's overwhelming, right? Even with crisis and turmoil. So I want people to know that, right? That I'm not some, ascended master that's got it all figured out. And, okay, I know a thing or two about a thing or two, but it's what I share, it's embodied wisdom because I've been on the journey. And guess what? As I started, I feel this coming full circle, Dom. I started by saying, I'm still on the path. Right. So my book, not to give the ending away, to anyone out there who hasn't read it yet. But it ends by saying, and now my life can begin. Right. So I'm on this path. I'm on this journey. And, just because I wrote a book and I'm an author and I've got degrees and titles after my name, again, I'm a stumbling human, just like everyone else out there. And we're in this together. And so that's why that question is so important, right? About the process of writing, the process of my own healing journey. Because I hope it shows people that no matter who you are, you could do this. You have it in you. And if you forget, I'm here to remind you.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. The good help, indeed. So powerful, indeed. Heck, even when you're talking about spirituality, it kind of reminds me of the classic thing. I'm sure it's with all faiths at one point or another. Is the fact, especially Buddhism with suffering, but it's the fact that like you join the Christian faith, it's like hey, every day sugar rainbows, the burden is light. Like
Mhm.
nah, fam, it's yeah,
Yeah,
it actually gets harder.
right, right. Yes, yes, yes. Indeed, it does. And that's just living, right? If we're not living, like I remember coming to this realization one day because at one point along my healing journey, I thought, well, yeah, I just have to be this ethereal spiritual being, and imagine I'm floating above the clouds and everything's going to be all right. And oh boy, did I come crashing down really fast, right? And that's when I realized that, everybody out there is so focused now. Spirituality has become this, this coveted, like, oh, I want to be spiritual too, right? And everybody's looking to ascend. But what people don't get is that if you want to ascend, you have to be willing to descend time and time and time again. That's what it's all about.
Oh, yeah, definitely preaching indeed. Dr. Christie's preaching indeed. So, my goodness, got two more questions for you, and I'll let you make a run for it. So, since books are food for the mind, if your book was a food, what would it be and why?
Oh, I like that question. That's certainly one I've not gotten yet. If my book were food for the soul or food for the mind, food for the soul, food for the mind, what kind of food would it be? I'd like to think that my book would be a decadent piece of pie because, you know, it's comforting. It feels familiar like home, right? A good old fashioned piece of apple pie. It's slightly a little dangerous and living on the edge, right? It's a sweet treat, but yeah, it's as comforting as home. And that's what I'm hoping that my book will feel like for people.
Well, usually in the pre-call before press recording, I say we talk about pie just as a joke, but little did I know it actually happened without me even mentioning it. All right.
All right, we're vibing. We're vibing. That's
Oh, man.
awesome. Woo! That's great. We're still vibing as late as it is. I don't even know what time it is. It's way past our bedtimes and we're still vibing. I love it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Usually the truth comes out in these night interviews because we're both silly as all get out, but hey, it's all
Yep.
good in the neighborhood indeed. So my goodness, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in 2022 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Mm. I would definitely say learn to love people for who they are right now and not for who you want them to be. And that is true for yourself also. Love yourself for who you are right now, not who you want yourself to be. And love other people for who they are right now and not who you want them to be. And we could save ourselves a lot of heartache and a lot of suffering if we learned how to do that, if we learned how to just see ourselves and others without condition. So that I don't know where that came from. That just came up in me. So there's my answer.
Woohoo! She's sticking to it like honey. Oh, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Because, hey, solid advice. Love people for who they are. Because it's so darn true. Because people change. That's right. They change indeed. Sometimes for the better. Sometimes for not the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what though? That's everybody's choice, right? So people change. They have a right to change. We don't have to like it, but if we could just accept them for where they're at, knowing that we're also changing, right? If we could accept ourselves and accept others without condition, well, I don't know. I think that life would be a hell of a lot easier. Wouldn't be easy, but it'll be a hell of a lot easier.
Heck yeah. That's right. You could wake up one day a nickel and be like, hey, most hated musician ever. And then one day and wake up in your 50-cent piece and like, haha, I'm a rapper who's petty. All right. All the change.
There you go. I love it.
Yes, dude. Can't be out in the wild without a corn cob appearing out of nowhere.
Right.
Well, before any more corn cobs appear, because they tend to pop out at random, folks need to follow you on your journey, especially when you come back for round 2 one of these days on Going North. So for folks who need to snag some copies of your book and keep up with your journey, what's the best way for folks to do so, Dr. Kristy?
Yeah. So you could check out my website. It's KristyVanacore.com. You can reach me through there. All of my links to social media are on there. I'm on Instagram under Vanacore Embody or Wild. I'm on Facebook, Dr. Kristy Vanacore. I love getting emails. I love connecting with new friends. I love connection. I live for connection. So definitely reach out to me, send me messages. And the links to purchase the book are also on the website. The book is on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, at local booksellers. So I'd be honored to share my story with you.
Woohoo! That's right, folks. And you probably only heard 5% of it tonight, folks, because she's a walking jewelry store, y'all, of gems and jewels. So be sure to follow her on the site. We're going to put that link to that in the show notes and snag a copy or a few of her magical book to share with your friends, family, cat, penguin, dog. Heck, maybe even share it with 2 penguins and a kangaroo. Indeed, heck, maybe even share it with a Care Bear, or better yet, wear a Care Bear costume and take a selfie with it and send it to Dr. Kristy. Oh, I'm telling you.
I guess you did read that chapter where the Care Bears are mentioned in my story, huh? They're in there. It's in there. We're vibing.
Yeah, folks. Think I'm just all silly. Nah, we do homework here. Yeah, we do homework here indeed. So any parting words before we close up shop, Dr. Kristy?
Just want to thank you so much for such a great conversation, and for really powerful questions, and for giving me an opportunity to share my story. And I've loved connecting with you, and I hope that we get to do it again soon.
How's it going, my friend? I'm so glad you made it to the end. That shows that you are an uncommon finisher, and I am so grateful for you sharing your ears, your attention, and your time to this wonderful podcast. To do something that'll take yourself to the next level, and for everybody else involved in this wonderful program, share it with at least 3 people in your network, so that way more folks can not only catch the fire that is on this podcast, but can also be inspired to be their best. Advance others to advance yourself.